Next question, how to keep rucking when dealing with blistered feet. Yeah, so there's a lot of different things you can do for foot care. I personally, it depends on your timeline. Right now, if you don't have a rucking event that's like coming up that you need to continue training for, and you can't take a week or 2 weeks off from rucking, then you probably should just take a couple weeks off from running and let your blisters mostly heal. And luckily, unless you just tore your feet up really, really bad, if you got like hot spots or like really minor blisters, that part of your foot is going to be more tough in the future, most likely. Not always, but that's usually how it works. So next few times you ruck, as you get back into it, as long as you're not going crazy long, like you didn't finish off with like a 10-mile ruck, and then next time you ruck after a couple weeks off, you go 15 or 20, you ease back into it reasonably. Your feet should be more and more adapted and tougher over time. It's almost like building a callus on your hand. It's actually very similar to building a callus on your hand because your feet do become calloused over time with the right exposure. Now, if you need to train, like you can't take any time off from training, or you have a ruck event or timed ruck coming up and you have to do it and you already have blisters, different story. That's when I would go to some sort of foot care technique, whether you are using moleskin, leukotape, two-tom sport, a combination of certain things. But I made a post about this recently too, about rucking boots for selection and how most people go about foot care and foot prep the wrong way. They start implementing all these foot care things. Some of the things I just talked about, the leukotape, the moleskin, the body glide, the two-tom sport, whatever you put on your feet to try and mitigate blisters. But what you're doing there is pretty much, instead of going to the gym and forming calluses on your hand from lifting barehanded, you're pretty much just putting a glove on so that your hand doesn't have to toughen up or adapt. You're almost like putting a Band-Aid on the situation. What you want to do is slowly and incrementally toughen your feet up by slowly and incrementally increasing your ruck duration, increasing your ruck volume, and in a reasonable manner, not a crazy manner like a lot of people do. Like, oh, I'm going to do a 3-mile ruck, then a 6-mile ruck, then a 9-mile ruck, then a 15-mile ruck. That is not what I mean by incremental. Slow and reasonable, very small increases in duration. And that is going to toughen your feet up. You can do things like get your feet wet and go for a ruck. Now, that's not necessarily a must do. Your feet are probably going to get wet anyway, especially if you're sweating and you're training in the summertime. Your feet are going to naturally get sweaty. And that is going to further allow you to adapt to those conditions, because guess what? When you do rucks, your feet are usually going to sweat, and sweat is wet, it's moisture, and it can increase the friction inside your boots and therefore cause blisters if you're not used to it. But you want to do your very best to avoid these things in the first place. That way you don't have to do all these crazy foot care things. I personally have never, ever, ever put moleskin on my feet or leukotape or two-toms, because I've always put myself in a situation where I've already created all these necessary adaptations on my feet, on my skin, in the exact boots that I'm going to be training in or that I'm going to be performing in. So my feet are very used to them. The boots are broken in, my feet are broken in. And so I never really had any issues with blisters. And a lot of people think that's crazy and far-fetched and not true. Literally, I had one blister from rucking in my entire career. And it was because, I've told this story before, but it's been a while. But on the second to last night of the long walk, Delta selection, I left my trusty old school Nike boots, which by the way are the best boots ever for rucking in my opinion, next to the fire. And the entire soles just ripped off the rest of the boot, like completely off. So I had to use my backup boots that, oh, by the way, I had not used the entire time at selection. I hadn't used them since I was training up. Every so often I wore those backup boots for train up. And those were the only boots I had access to that were serviceable. So I had to wear them, and my feet weren't used to them. And I got a blister on my right heel during the really long walk that they do at the end of that selection. And that's it. After that, that was my last time rucking at that selection, luckily. So I didn't have to manage it. I didn't have to treat it. I just let it heal. But that is kind of the reality of what is possible. You can get your feet to where they're pretty much fucking indestructible. Most people just don't go about it the right way because they start using these Band-Aids way too soon. And like I said, it's just like wearing a glove in the gym so that your hands don't get messed up. That's kind of the backwards way to think about it.